Here from the San Francisco Standard with J.D. Vance's VP, Peter Teal, would finally have Trump right where he wants him.
Here is what I would have to say. At the very least, I'm glad that people are correctly identifying this Vance swamp monster for what he is, which is a puppet and a creation of Peter Teal, who, as they outline, not only was he hired by Peter Thiel's company back in 2017, not only did Teal invest heavily in Vance's own investment capital fund, not only did he donate $15 million to Vance's Senate campaign, but he also apparently affected the rapprochement between Vance and Trump, because, in case you haven't heard, Vance had some very not nice things to say about Trump in the past, so why are they together now? Who was one of the first prime angel investors in Facebook? Oh, that's right, Peter Teal. Who created Palantir? Oh, that's right, Peter Teal. Who was a big investor in Palantir? In-Q-Tel. And who was Palantir's biggest client for the first several years of his existence, at least? The CIA. Oh, that's right. Peter Teal is up to his eyeballs in the deep state. He is a deep state swamp monster. If you want more on that, I will point people to an interesting and good overview from Covert Action magazine. Sugar daddy of Trump's VP pick has deep ties to CIA. And they go through a lot of information about Teal and Palantir and its connections, and how Palantir is, of course, heavily invested in supplying technologies of warfare and destruction to Israel. So whatever Vance may or may not have said in the past, one imagines Peter Teal may be directing American foreign policy more so in the future. Oh, guess where Palantir recently had their board meeting? In Tel Aviv, of course. But if you want even more on Palantir, where it came from, how it conquered the world, might I humbly suggest my article from 2 years ago, How Palantir Conquered the World. I go through the craziness that is Palantir. I think maybe deserving of a re-airing now that we're entering the new era. But anyway, what a pick. Wow, wonderful. Drain that swamp, Mr. Trump.
I'm doing modeling in the history blueprint over here because I had double Palantir entries. So let me just go back to the actual entry, and I'll go back here. In-Q-Tel is the CIA front company. They do a bunch of funding. And Palantir, Information Warfare Monitor. Palantir is actually a screeing ball, what you might call a crystal ball if it didn't cause conflict with Breaking Point's crystal ball and a bunch of confusion. So they call it Palantir, but it's really their way to see into the future, to predict people's activity using artificial intelligence algorithms fed by your social media profile and a whole bunch of other good stuff. Welcome back to the show, Scott Armstrong. He's been away for a couple weeks. He's been traveling around, living life, celebrating, going to these conferences. I see him on panels
President
with
Trump
some of my buddies out there. How you doing, Scotty?
What's up, Rich? What's up, everybody? So good to be back, man. Like, it has been a pretty wild last few weeks, but I'm really stoked to be back here. Yeah, I met a lot of cool people, man. It was pretty rad. Got to hang out with Steve from Slow News Day, Charlie Robinson. And then the Freedom Fest was very interesting. There were some people that were not freedom people there. That's for sure.
In Vegas, right? Like around July 4th. I've never been. What was it like?
Okay, so basically the way I characterize it is it was like not all freedom people. There was like a lot of like crypto people, financial people, silver and gold people, which you'd think is kind of like freedom adjacent. But, you know, I was representing Unjected, right? So we had a little booth there. Shelby got to do a presentation, and you know, very well received. Lots of people were stoked to find out about Unjected, but we did have lots of people coming up to us and lecturing us. This one lady thought that mRNA technology is the greatest invention in human history. There was this one physician that came out to us and told us about how the reason why she doesn't have any patients in iron lungs is because of the polio vaccine. We're like, whoa, you've never looked into any of this stuff, obviously. So
what's the book on that? Is it The Butterfly and the Iron Lung? What's the
Something
story?
Like that.
Yeah, it's
yeah. It's really I mean, there's so many different aspects to it, but it's much like we saw with COVID. It's like just lying with statistics, shifting numbers around, like redefining what polio is, like myelitis and all these things like that. Plus, not only to mention, when you actually track the charts, and I went back at one point and found because it was the CIA back then was the ones that kept the data on this stuff for some reason. And I remember looking at actual like raw data of like the handwritten notes of like number of cases like per year. You can look through the 40s, through the 50s. You see like a large, spike in the 40s, 50s, and DDT, of course. Like DDT is a huge contributor to what they say, right? And then you see that the spike drop. So you can find like line charts of this, and it drops, pretty much bottoms out And then right there, like 1955 is when the polio vaccine was introduced, when it was already, for the most part, eradicated for whatever reason. So, a lot of people attribute that to, post-World War II, lots of infrastructure development, sanitation, indoor plumbing, garbage pickup, a lot of cleaner sanitation, more sanitary conditions in the cities and stuff like that. So there's all these other factors involved that were contributed to the decline and almost eradication of it prior to the polio vaccine. And then you can look today, like you can find Reuters articles right now that say that or AP, I can't remember, one of the two main news sources talking about how all of the polio that's around today in the wild is from the polio vaccine. So anyway, so this lady's just off a rocker. So anyway, and then Steven Pinker, you familiar with this guy? Steven Pinker?
I've heard the name. Can't. Yeah.
So he's a Harvard professor.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
And if you go to freedomfest.com, he was like the first person on their speaker list. So he was like the highest billed person. We went to his presentation, and he was talking about how anybody that questions the COVID vaccines lacks intellect and doesn't know what they're talking about. And quote, unquote,
I'd ask him. I mean, I would just put my hand up and
yeah,
like, because the whole thing is, in these situations, you can either choose to argue with these people, or you can play curious, inquire. So from your understanding, because I don't want to be ignorant, sir.
Yeah.
Like, who developed the mRNA technology and licensed it to Moderna in the first place? And if you don't know DARPA, then you don't know what you're talking about. I don't need to listen. We can all have a nice day. So, but when people level those types of claims, it's like, if you are over here, if you even think about this, then you're this. It's like, bro, that guy's scared to go over there and look at that data. Maybe we should go look at it because he's not doing it.
Exactly. Well, and then he did say that, well, I'll tell you a little how we reacted to it. It's a hilarious story. So basically but he also said, Wikipedia is a very objective, reliable source of information. So there you go. So that was fantastic. So yeah, that was this Harvard professor. I was like, who is this guy? Why is he here? So anyway, the very first day of the festival, one of the speakers was Governor Lombardo from Nevada, and he was around during the Vegas shooting incident, right? And so there's a lot of questions about his involvement, cover-ups, this and that. And there was a filmmaker named Mindy Robinson there who had produced a documentary kind of questioning some of the suspicious aspects of the Vegas shooting.
Like how the police chief responsible then went to be police chief of Lahaina and preside over that big disaster. That's
100%. So now they knew she was a troublemaker, so they weren't going to let her into the festival. She was tweeting about this. And so she finally got in. And so during Lombardo's presentation, she stood up and started yelling at him, like, you're involved in it. And they escorted her out, like armed police, like grabbed her and escorted her, kicked her out of the thing. So we knew that was kind of the vibe. Like if I were to stand up and start yelling at Pinker, like, fuck you, man, all this stuff,
Yeah.
So I was standing next to Shelby. I'm like, all right, how do we make a scene without making a scene? And I was like, oh, I got an idea.
Play dumb.
Well, no. So earlier that day, we'd been hanging out with Maj Toure, Black Guns Matter, right?
For sure.
And I bought one of his shirts, which I've been meaning to buy this shirt forever, but he had one in stock and I bought it. It's the big one that just in big bold letters says, fuck that vaccine all the way across, right? So I ran back to the booth and I put it on and I walked right up to the front row, like right in front of him. I was like that. And then I turned around to the audience and I was looking at all them and I was giving him one of these. I was like, what's going on? Why are we not revolting? Like, I was just like walking down the aisle, just like looking at him, like with my hands up in the air, like, just like, what is this? What is this? What is going on here? So that was my, silent way of resisting what he was saying. So there you go. It was pretty funny. It was funny. So, but otherwise it was great, man. I got to hang out with, Lynn Ulbricht. We hung out with her quite a bit, actually. Like we chatted with her quite a bit. Got to know her.
Tomorrow there's a secret conference call, but later this week, the Free Raw song, with the video that Jordan Page made for it. So
Cool.
He wrote the song. Yeah. And now there's a video that's going to be launched this week.
Awesome.
And, there's a call tomorrow. So we can all, as producers, see it together and then just get it out there.
That's amazing, man. Yeah. We talked about you, talked about Jordan. Definitely. She gave you a lot of props and kudos for everything you've done. And, it was cool, man. Met Luke Rudowski and then his buddy Andrew Meyer. They're both on the Tim Pool show. And they found out about Unjected. And Andrew was super pumped up. He's like, what? This actually exists? And we're like, yeah. He's like, you want to go on Tim Pool? And we're like, yeah, dude, of course. So like, he's kind of working behind the scenes. We're trying to get Shelby on their show. You know what I mean? Like trying to
for sure,
nudge her in that direction. So fantastic. Oh, we hung out with Del Bigtree. They were super cool. Like one of their producers, like we actually ran into them at the airport. We were wearing our Unjected gear.
You met Jimmy?
No, not Jimmy.
Oh,
I've had
okay.
I've had
You know
kind of
Jimmy.
Yeah, I know Jimmy.
Right.
I've had correspondence
Yeah.
with him, but another one of their producers. I don't know how public he wants to be, but we
Right on.
we we were wearing our Vax, like we have our Unjected merch. Shelby had a shirt that says "Unvaxxed or hotter," so she was wearing that through the airport. I had my probably this Unjected shirt on,
Yeah.
but they saw our shirts and they came up to us and they were like, "Whoa, are you guys with Unjected?" We're like, "Yeah." So they were producers with the High Wire. So we met them at the airport and then we saw them at the conference. So we already had that connection. And I was showing him clip Genie and he was like, "Whoa, dude, let's have a meeting." I'm like, "Yeah, dude, let's do it." So all in all, man, it was overall just fantastic networking, like incredible time. Met so many amazing people, and all the trolls and the people that weren't there for freedom. Just kind of that was a very small blip on the radar compared to how awesome it was. We were doing man on the street interviews. You guys can see all those at the Unjected Instagram, and yeah, man, it was pretty worthwhile, pretty epic, pretty legendary. So yeah,
I don't think I've been on social media much since you were last on the show.
yeah.
So I'm gonna have to go check those things out. I'm also interested in the new Bohemian Grove footage that they caught this year.
Oh, I haven't even heard about
It's
that.
later in New World next week. Actually, LD, will you just scrub forward to it? So maybe we'll just play. It's only like a couple seconds in there because they don't really have footage, but they show you some of the footage. So like millennial YouTubers who have heard about Bohemian Grove, I don't know, like a dozen of them snuck in this year. They got jobs in various places, and what the samples of the footage I just saw was so strikingly different than what we're all used to seeing VHS from Alex Jones in the 90s and shit, right?
Whoa, that's
This is
amazing.
like iPhone color. You could see here's these guys dressed up like guards. Here's these people in their robes. They're walking through with like their torches or whatever. It's a whole like for something that they used to deny, and that's a conspiracy theory and it doesn't exist. It's like, bro, here it is. Now people are getting to see. That's the difference about the 2020s as opposed to like the first 20 years of this century, is we tried so hard to get people, and they're like, no, because with only Alex Jones going to Bohemian Grove, you're like, oh, I could take it or leave it. I don't know what to think because they don't know how to parse the information. But now when you could see like people you might follow just went there and did this thing and brought this footage, now you have it for your consideration. And yeah, it's fascinating. Oh, LD's got it up there.
Did you? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, this is from that video, New World next week.
Yeah. So they were talking, they hadn't really seen it, but they know it exists. Now I know it exists. I have to go see it.
Did you know that James O'Keefe went to Bohemian Grove? Did you hear about this?
He went to Bo Grove. Did he get invited was he undercover? How did he do it?
Okay, so he was invited. He was an attendee. So this is so what happened was at this other, so before the Vegas trip and the Colorado trip, I was at Music and Sky Festival out in California, and that was a cool trip as well. But I met this guy named Justin Leslie, and he created his own. So he used to work for Project Veritas. In fact, you remember the Pfizer guy that they got, that epic one with the directed evolution, the guy that was like going on dates with people and spilled the beans about all that stuff. Yeah. So this was the guy that he was going on the dates with. So he was working as an undercover for Project Veritas that was going out on all these dates, and he was the one that captured all that footage. And they kind of did him dirty. So he was going Project Veritas on Project Veritas and got a bunch of dirt on them and dropped this documentary called Project Whistleblower that I'm not surprised that it hasn't blown up and gotten so much attention, but it is on YouTube. It's called Project Whistleblower, 2-part thing about his involvement behind the scenes at Project Veritas. And in one of them, he played me the recording too. He's like, yeah, here's James O'Keefe talking about him going to Bohemian Grove and how he had to like get an STD test after it too. So this is like out of James O'Keefe's mouth. Like, that's what I'm saying. So he's just a shout out.
That could just be because he used the toilet. I'd be concerned too. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So we don't have to jump to conclusions, but I am interested, and I will review
Yeah.
that information because it sounds spicy. Spicy.
He's coming on the Unjected show this Wednesday at 8 Eastern. So we're having him on the show. So it's just interesting overlap there. But yeah.
Now
Shout out to Justin.
Shout out for sure. That's really fascinating, and the Bohemian Grove aspect lighting up. I mean, this is the time of year when they go down for their creation of care, and they have their patron saint, Saint John of Nepomuk, and you've got this kind of Canaanite Baal worship, thing going on with this Bohemian group of artists who soon started attracting and entertaining powerful people in the woods for a couple weeks, mostly people from America's Eastern establishment families and power structure. But specifically, you had like George Pratt Schultz, and his dad was Burl Earl Schultz, who helped to start the American International Corporation that we've been talking about for this past several weeks in this Bolshevik kind of line of education of, maybe they never had a trial and were brought to justice, and these things are still going on today. Wall Street and the City of London funding such things. So that's interesting. Maybe more. The industrialists like Bechtel had a big instrumental part in Bohemian Grove. Here's the Bechtel Corporation. They're, makers of war. Like, these are the masters of war. Not just them, but they got other companies they work with. I'm just saying, as far as the New World Order and the World Order by Eustace Mullins, there's like a whole story that you can learn about Brookings. Like, who's coming out with this 2025 plan, and who are these other people doing these other things? Like, there are some overlaps in these non-profit foundations and these groups that are looking for world government. They have agents that do their dirty work. That's called the deep state, and they're not elected. So that's something we're going to get into as we move forward tonight. But first,
that's awesome. Well, I got one more thing to say. I got to
sure.
say, I got a couple more things. So I have this. This is an artifact for you. Bohemian Grove Cult of Conspiracy by Mike Hansen. This is the guy that Alex Jones snuck into Bohemian Grove.
Yeah, I know
with.
Mike.
I've known Mike. Yeah, I got the pleasure of meeting
2006. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I met him at the screening of Alex's War here in Nashville. He was here, so I chatted with him, got his number, and I need to follow up with him, obviously. But anyway,
he's
that
like the technical guy that allowed Alex to kind of build up in the first place. So
totally.
When I talked to Mike for the first time, he had like 7 different computers downstairs, all wired up to do this and send the signal. And he's very smart,
that's so cool.
Interesting guy.
That's so cool. So then the last thing I'll say is I did get recognized a few times at these events, from Music in Sky, at obviously at the Steve's event, the Third Eye Carnival, and at Freedom Fest. And every single time I was recognized, it was always from this show. So there's a lot of Grand Theft World people out there, and just shout out to you guys out in the audience. Pretty legendary stuff. So that was awesome. It's weird. I haven't ever been recognized before. One other time I was at another festival, and some lady recognized my voice. She heard me like yelling across the camp, and she's like, "Wait, I recognize that voice." She'd never seen me. She'd only listened to the audio podcast. She's like, "Are you Scott from the old show I used to do, Truthzilla?" So that was the only other time I recognized. But these last few trips, I was recognized a few times. It was all from Grand Theft World. So that was pretty cool.
Our audience are astute observers of reality, and I'm glad that they are bold enough to walk up and be like, "Hey, dude, what's up? Nice to see you in person." Totally. Were any of them like, "Oh, you're a star," and they were like starstruck?
No, I wasn't like that.
Right?
They were just, dude, everyone's just cool.
Not.
Everyone's just like cool and just like, everyone's
so
just,
those of you who see Scott out and about, you're not trying to be a star fucker by going up and saying, "Hey, dude, what's up? I appreciate your work." In fact, as you just heard, he gets vitality, he gets invigorated, he gets inspired, he gets recharged, because we also get to hear negative things too. So if you're not giving us the positive things and all we hear is the negative things, then some people care. I don't pick it up and I don't put it down, but some people care. So thank you guys for being kind to Scott out there. And it just shows the culture of excellence that is cultivated with this audience of astute observers of reality.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures. They're hosting videos. They're maybe even doing Q&As. And these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.
Cool.